Welcome to the Deep Dive, your shortcut to being truly well-informed. In a world buzzing with information, we cut through the noise to bring you the most important nuggets of knowledge and insight. Today, we're not just looking at headlines, we're sort of weaving together these threads from humanity's really deep past right up to the cosmic frontier, and navigating global power shifts, technological breakthroughs, all to help you uncover the essential insights shaping our world. This isn't just news, it's, a tapestry of innovation, challenge, and humanity's relentless quest for understanding. Our stack of sources for this deep dive is vast, spanning scientific breakthroughs from Science Daily and Space.com, the latest in tech from TechCrunch. We've got crucial geopolitical updates from Al Jazeera and France 24, and economic analyses from the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal. So yeah, we've got a lot to unpack. Let's get started.
Okay, let's unpack this with a truly mind-bending journey. First, we're going right to the edge of the known universe, and then back in time to its absolute beginning.
It's wild to consider how much we're still discovering about both the cosmos and our own ancient origins. And sometimes they seem connected, right?
It's a continuous process of recalibration, isn't it? These discoveries from the, subatomic level all the way out to interstellar space, they perpetually reshape our understanding of fundamental existence and, our place within it all.
So let's kick off with something genuinely profound. Scientists are preparing to study what some are calling the ashes of the Big Bang. There's a new particle detector. Apparently, it just passed its crucial standard candle test, so it's ready to dive into this enigmatic quark-gluon plasma.
Yeah.
Now, for those of us who aren't particle physicists, what exactly does unlocking this ancient plasma tell us? What's the big deal?
Right, it sounds incredibly technical, but this isn't just about cosmic archaeology,
Yeah.
The quark-gluon plasma, it's a state of matter believed to have existed for just a billionth of a second after the Big Bang. It's essentially the primordial soup of the universe. So by studying it, scientists hope to gain critical insights into the fundamental forces that shaped everything and refine our understanding of quantum chromodynamics. Think of it like the ultimate rule book for the universe's fundamental particles, quarks, and gluons.
Okay, the rule book.
Yeah, and if we can fine-tune that rule book by studying this plasma, it could potentially explain some of the universe's biggest mysteries, like why does matter have mass? What is dark matter, really? And beyond the, abstract science, understanding something so fundamental, it could ripple through other scientific fields, maybe even revolutionizing energy generation or materials science in ways we can't even imagine yet.
That's a powerful point, actually. The practical ripples from these really theoretical insights. So from the very, very tiny and very, very early, let's jump to something that just flew by us, literally. Astronomers recently captured this stunning image of an interstellar comet, 3I ALS. It shows it growing a luminous tail and coma as it zipped towards the sun. An interstellar invader. That's pretty cool.
Oh, it's truly rare, this observation, and immensely significant. Comet 3I it's an object that originated from outside our solar system. It's basically a cosmic postcard from another star system.
Wow.
Observing the sublimation process, that's where gas and dust are released, creating the tail on an interstellar comet like this one. It's like getting a chemical fingerprint from another star system. It allows us to compare its composition to, our own solar system's comets, reveals unique details about the building blocks of other planetary neighborhoods out there.
So differences in what things are made of out there compared to here.
Exactly. It truly highlights the vastness and complexity of the universe, doesn't it? Reminds us our solar system is just one small corner of a much, much larger cosmic tapestry.
Right, from the edge of the universe to, well, maybe not life as we know it, but life possibilities near dead stars. There's a new study exploring life around white dwarf stars.
Yeah, this is fascinating. White dwarfs are essentially the remnants of stars like our sun after they've exhausted their nuclear fuel and shed their outer layers. Now, conditions are harsh, intense radiation, low temperatures. But this research explores molecules that could potentially support life in their atmospheres, maybe even in subsurface oceans.
Subsurface oceans on planets orbiting a white dwarf.
It's speculative, of course, but it expands our definition of habitable zones. Traditionally, we look for Earth-like planets around sun-like stars. This challenges that.
What if life is just far more adaptable than we currently imagine? Could these sort of dead stars actually harbor thriving ecosystems beneath the surface?
That's the big question, isn't it? It urges us to think bigger about astrobiology, about where life could realistically form and survive. It really pushes the boundaries of our imagination.
Okay, from the macrocosm of the universe, let's bring it much closer to home, but way back in time, to the very specific footsteps of our ancient ancestors. Archaeologists in Schöningen, Lower Saxony, that's in Germany, have found 300,000-year-old human footprints from Homo heidelbergensis. Now, Homo heidelbergensis is a direct relative of modern humans and Neanderthals, and this discovery is literally reshaping European history.
It's an incredible snapshot of the ancient past. It offers such a direct connection to our ancestors, doesn't it? These aren't just, abstract scientific facts. They're literally the footsteps of our species' relatives, showing us exactly where they walked, and maybe even with whom.
With whom?
Well, the tracks were found alongside those of elephants and rhinoceroses. It suggests a really diverse ecosystem back then, and maybe communal activities like foraging or traveling together by a lake. Plus, the presence of both adult and child prints that hints at complex social structures within these early human groups.
Wow.
It paints a much more vivid picture of their daily lives, makes you feel incredibly connected to that distant past,
It certainly does. Like, you can almost picture them there. And what if those ancestors had an even stranger trick up their sleeves for survival? Studies are now suggesting early humans, including Homo heidelbergensis and Neanderthals, might have had the biological capacity to hibernate. Maybe not like a bear, but
Yeah.
hibernate nonetheless.
Yeah.
This is where it gets really interesting.
This hypothesis is truly profound, I think. There's forensic evidence from ancient bone fossils, patterns of sentinel trauma, and these things called growth arrest lines. They look similar to what you'd see in the bones of hibernating animals today. So it suggests early humans might have entered some kind of metabolic dormancy, basically slowing everything down to conserve energy when food was scarce, especially during frigid periods. We see this particularly at sites where Neanderthals lived.
So not full-on deep sleep hibernation for months.
Probably not. Their social structures might have made that difficult, needing to maintain group cohesion, defense. But the idea that our ancestors could enter a state of reduced metabolic activity for survival, that's groundbreaking in itself.
And the truly wild part, for me at least, is that modern research is even looking into induced hibernation for future applications, like long-duration space travel or medical recovery. So could a skill that was once vital for ancient survival be rediscovered for humanity's cutting-edge future? That's kind of mind-blowing.
Absolutely. This isn't just some quirky historical footnote. It suggests we might carry a dormant genetic blueprint for, deep space survival within us. Imagine astronauts basically sleeping their way to Mars, conserving resources, minimizing psychological strain over years.
Or patients in suspended animation for complex surgeries or
Yeah.
to aid recovery from major trauma.
Exactly. Our ancient past could quite literally be a guide to our cutting-edge future in medicine and exploration.
But what's the biggest skepticism from the scientific community here?
Yeah.
What are the main hurdles we'd need to overcome to even consider inducing something like this in modern humans?
Oh, that's a great question. It really hinges on understanding the exact genetic and metabolic triggers for such a deep dormancy. We'd need to figure out how to activate those triggers reliably and, crucially, without inducing harmful side effects. That's a massive challenge for molecular biology and medicine. The complexities are immense.
Right.
But the potential rewards are equally vast, aren't they? It blurs the lines between an ancient survival mechanism and a potential future therapeutic intervention.
Okay, one more historical item before we jump fully into the present. The Shroud of Turin. There's news about a 600-year-old document, supposedly written by a medieval philosopher named Nicole Oresme, and this document apparently declares the shroud a fraud, suggesting it was manufactured for profit and faith manipulation by clergy back then.
Yes, this is fascinating because Oresme's 14th century skepticism predates modern carbon dating by centuries. The carbon dating in the late 20th century dated the shroud to between 1260 and 1390 CE, which aligns quite well with Oresme's time. So it highlights that doubts about the relic's authenticity are really not new at all. It reflects an era that was actually rife with forgeries, but also a time of growing intellectual skepticism about religious orthodoxy.
So it's less about the shroud itself and more about medieval thought.
In a way, yes. It's a window into medieval thought, the commercialization of faith, and that ongoing human struggle, really, to discern truth from artifice, belief from manipulation, even 600 years ago.
Okay, so whether it's the footsteps of our ancestors, ancient survival strategies, or echoes of cosmic beginnings, the past keeps challenging and informing us. But humanity is also relentlessly pushing forward, charting new courses both on our planet and towards the vast unknown. Let's blast off into that future, starting with the new space race. Now, let's blast off into the new space race, and then we'll dive into some of the latest tech innovations shaping our world. It's definitely a busy time for humanity's ambitions, both off-world and right here at home.
It truly is. We're witnessing a remarkable acceleration, I think, in both public and private sector initiatives. They're really pushing the boundaries of what's possible, from, missions back to the moon to sorting out the ethical frameworks for artificial intelligence.
First up, NASA, that's the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, is moving full steam ahead with its Artemis II mission. The Orion spacecraft is carrying a crew around the moon as we speak, or preparing to very soon. And there's a specialized team in this new Orion Mission Evaluation Room, the MER, in Houston, apparently just glued to screens, monitoring every little detail.
Right, and this is a crucial step for the entire Artemis program. The goal is to return humans to the moon, establish a long-term presence, basically laying essential groundwork for future crewed missions to Mars. The Orion MER is effectively the ultimate nerve center, isn't it? Engineers ensuring every single system is nominal, as they say, making human presence in deep space safer, more feasible.
It really showcases the advancements in space technology and also just the meticulous mission management needed.
Exactly. Highlights the dedication required for humans to actually go back into deep space.
And speaking of deep space, NASA's also thinking long-term about what happens after the International Space Station, the ISS. It's scheduled for deorbiting in 2030, right?
That's the plan. So NASA is actively seeking industry input for the next phase of commercial space stations. They've released a draft Phase 2 announcement for partnership proposals, or AFPP. The goal is to maintain a continuous human presence in low Earth orbit, LEO, but through innovative commercial partners. Phase 2 agreements will support the design and demonstration phases.
What does it involve exactly?
Well, a key requirement is hosting 4 crew members for at least 30 days. It's a big shift towards commercial operations.
And what could that mean for space access?
Well, potentially, it could democratize space access somewhat, open up new research avenues, maybe make LEO activities more cost-efficient. You have to wonder, what kind of businesses will emerge in this new space economy? Space tourism, manufacturing, research labs.
Interesting. So we're laying the groundwork for the moon, planning for commercial LEO stations.
Yeah.
But the ultimate prize, it seems, is still Mars. And before we send humans all that way, NASA is conducting a year-long simulation of a Mars mission. 4 volunteers are living in the 1,700-square-foot Mars Dune Alpha habitat at the Johnson Space Center in Houston. It's called CHAPIA. That stands for Crew Health and Performance Exploration Analog, and it began on October 19th.
The CHAPIA initiative is absolutely vital. I mean, imagine living in what's basically a giant high-tech sandbox, completely cut off from the outside world for 378 days. They're replicating the resource-deprived, isolating environment of Mars. That's essentially what these volunteers are doing right now.
Why is that so important?
Because they're gathering critical data on human health and performance during these extended missions. The psychological and physiological data will be invaluable. This isn't just about the rockets and the hardware. It's about understanding the profound toll these long missions take on the human body and mind. How do people cope with confinement, isolation, limited resources, communication delays?
Right, all the human factors.
Exactly. This data will help develop effective strategies and safeguards for the real missions to Mars and beyond.
And to actually land safely on Mars, we need the right materials. The U.S. Space Force's X-37B spaceplane is apparently testing a material called Xylon.
That's right. They're looking at Xylon to enhance landing systems for future crewed and cargo missions to Mars. This kind of material science advancement is crucial for achieving a sustainable human presence there. Safe landings are obviously paramount. So focusing on materials like Xylon represents a significant step towards practical, repeatable deep space operations.
So from monitoring moon missions, simulating Mars living, planning commercial stations, developing new landing materials, these are concrete, methodical steps towards potentially making humanity a multi-planetary species. Okay, from the physical frontiers of space, let's pivot to the digital frontier right here on Earth. Specifically, the ethical minefield that artificial intelligence seems to be constantly creating. We've got major news on copyright and child safety.
This is undoubtedly one of the most pressing issues in the rapidly evolving AI landscape, isn't it?
Yeah.
The legal and ethical implications of generative AI. They're immense. They touch upon creators' rights, public safety, the very foundation of intellectual property. It's sparking really intense debate.
And here's a big one. The AI company Anthropic agreed to a massive $1.5 billion settlement in a copyright infringement lawsuit. Authors Andrea Bartz, Charles Graeber, and Kirk Wallace Johnson alleged their works were used to train Anthropic's AI chatbot, Claude, without their consent. That is a huge number.
It really is. Reportedly the largest U.S. copyright settlement in history. It applies to approximately 500,000 books, working out to around $3,000 allocated per work. This sets a very strong precedent for AI companies regarding intellectual property rights. You can see why authors and creators view this as a significant victory.
Protecting their work, ensuring fair compensation in this new AI era.
Exactly. Now, AI developers, while they settled this case, might still argue that using data for training is like fair use for learning, not direct reproduction. But the sheer size of this settlement sends a clear message. The legal landscape for AI is tightening. Fast.
So essentially, if an AI is going to write the next great novel, you better have a hefty library card.
Oh.
And a lawyer on speed dial.
Chuckle. Something like that, yeah.
And it's not just about books either. Warner Bros. Is suing Midjourney over AI-generated images of popular characters like Superman and Batman. And separately, we have the California Attorney General Rob Bonta and Delaware Attorney General Kathy Jennings warning OpenAI about the impact of ChatGPT on children and teenagers, stressing the need for stringent safety measures.
Right. These cases highlight the legal and ethical complexities across different sectors. Creative industries, protection of vulnerable populations. It's broad. The attorneys general emphasized that ensuring child safety isn't just an ethical nice-to-have, it's a legal imperative.
So what are the different sides arguing here generally?
Well, proponents of generative AI emphasize its transformative potential for creativity, efficiency. They advocate for balanced regulation that doesn't stifle innovation. Critics, on the other hand, demand much stronger safeguards. They view these tools as potential vectors for exploitation, misinformation, or copyright infringement if they're left unchecked.
How will this shape AI development going forward, do you think? More walled gardens? More transparency?
It's hard to say for sure. We might see more caution around data sourcing, perhaps more focus on synthetic data. Platforms will have to balance innovation with protection very carefully. Ultimately, these cases will shape the legal and ethical frameworks for AI, impacting everything from, your favorite movies to how your kids interact with technology online.
Staying with AI, but on a more personal level, the personalized AI companion app Dot is shutting down.
Yeah, this highlights some real challenges in the AI companion space, balancing technological innovation with user satisfaction, ethical considerations, and just basic operational sustainability. It's proving tricky.
And it causes distress, right, when these services change or disappear.
Absolutely. Many users experience genuine distress when services reduce capabilities or just terminate altogether. Think about the controversy around Replica, another AI companion app, when they pulled back certain features. Users felt abandoned, raising concerns about the developer's responsibility in nurturing what can become fundamentally supportive, even emotional digital relationships.
So, are we ready for AI friends? And what does it mean when they disappear?
These are big questions. It's not just about apps, it's about our evolving relationship with artificial intelligence and potentially our own mental well-being. The debate revolves around ensuring meaningful, accurate, and supportive interactions without ethical ambiguity or, sudden abandonment.
Meanwhile, OpenAI seems to be responding to some of these concerns. They're restructuring the research team responsible for ChatGPT's personality.
Yes, the aim seems to be enhancing conversational abilities and fostering fresh ideas for more empathetic AI. It's likely a response to growing user demand for more personalized AI experiences, but also to the intensifying discussions around AI ethics and personality. They want interactions to be helpful, but also safe.
Shifting gears to big tech accountability. The European Commission just fined Google a staggering $2.95 billion. That's about $3.5 billion US. The charge is abusing its dominance in online advertising by favoring its own services and limiting competition. Google plans to appeal, naturally.
This is definitely part of the ongoing European Union efforts to hold tech giants accountable for their market practices. We've seen other recent fines in the US and France over privacy and cookie violations too. The EU's perspective is clear. They emphasize fair competition and a level playing field in digital advertising. They believe Google's actions created unfair advantages.
But President Donald Trump has reacted strongly, calling the fine unfair and discriminatory. He's warned of potential Section 301 investigations and tariffs on European goods in retaliation.
Right. The Trump administration views these fines as unfairly targeting American companies. They're concerned about the potential impact on U.S. investments and jobs. So this really highlights the ongoing power struggle between global tech giants and global regulators. It directly impacts digital commerce, data privacy, international trade relations. Each side is strongly defending its economic and strategic interests.
It's clear that while humanity's ingenuity is boundless, so too are the ethical and regulatory quagmires that emerge. And these aren't just software issues. They're deeply rooted in our industrial capabilities, or maybe lack thereof, here on Earth. Let's talk manufacturing.
Indeed. Sectors like batteries and semiconductors are absolutely foundational to our modern digital existence and economic competitiveness.
Well, there's some tough news on the battery front first. Natron Energy, a California-based company that planned to produce sodium-ion batteries, filed for liquidation after just 18 months.
Yeah, that's a concerning development. Natron cited financial difficulties inherent in the U.S. battery manufacturing sector. It highlights some significant barriers for domestic manufacturers: high labor costs, intense competition from established players, especially overseas, and real struggles to secure funding.
And what's the bigger implication?
Well, setbacks like this could potentially delay America's energy independence goals. The push for sustainable energy storage is huge, but this story shows the tough road to actually onshoring critical manufacturing, even with government support.
Okay, but there's a brighter side in semiconductors, right? The U.S. semiconductor industry is projected to hit almost $700 billion in sales in 2025.
$697 billion, yeah. Driven largely by generative AI and massive data center expansions. This is a booming sector. Global sales surged almost 20% to $627 billion in 2024. The U.S. industry is transforming, focusing heavily on R&D and expecting over 100,000 new jobs.
And we're seeing big investments.
Huge investments. Key players like TSMC, that's Taiwan's semiconductor manufacturing company, are investing heavily in U.S. manufacturing facilities. This is crucial for strengthening the domestic supply chain, especially given current geopolitical tensions.
It's amazing how central these tiny chips are.
Absolutely. From your phone to self-driving cars, semiconductors are truly the brains of modern tech. This growth isn't just economic, it's foundational to our technological future and global competitiveness. It's a critical area where national security and economic prowess really intersect.
And speaking of competition and essential tech, connectivity in the sky is heating up. JetBlue just became the first airline to pick Amazon's Project Kuiper for in-flight Wi-Fi. They're moving away from SpaceX's Starlink.
Interesting move. This decision by JetBlue really highlights the growing competition in the low Earth orbit satellite internet market. Project Kuiper, with its planned constellation of thousands of satellites, is promising faster, more reliable internet. It's a direct challenge to Starlink.
So why does an airline's choice matter so much?
Well, having a major airline like JetBlue make this choice sets a precedent. It emphasizes the increasing importance of robust connectivity in modern air travel, especially for, streaming movies or working on long-haul flights. It's a clear sign that we're seeing a significant expansion in options for reliable, high-speed global internet access, even at 35,000 feet.
Well, somebody just got dumped. Looks like even in space, there's always a newer, shinier option coming along.
Chuckle, competition is fierce, definitely.
And ultimately, we, the consumers, usually win with better service when that happens, right? Next time you're flying, your streaming movie might just be powered by a different tech titan. From the innovations in space and tech, let's turn our attention back to Earth's most pressing challenges, and also some of humanity's most creative solutions for a sustainable future. First, imagine turning ordinary windows into efficient, clean energy generators without losing clarity. Scientists have developed a new transparent solar coating using something called cholesteric liquid crystal layers to do just that.
This sounds like a groundbreaking development in renewable energy. The tech basically redirects polarized sunlight to tiny solar cells hidden at the window's edges. Researchers are optimistic that once it's fully developed for full-sized windows, the efficiency could increase by maybe 50 times compared to traditional see-through photovoltaic cells.
50 times?
Yeah. Which would drastically reduce the need for extensive, bulky solar installations in urban environments.
So the speculation is skyscrapers becoming vertical power plants.
Exactly. Imagine buildings seamlessly integrating energy generation right into their design. This could potentially revolutionize urban sustainability and how we power our cities. It's a really elegant solution for energy demands in densely populated areas.
Vertical power plants.
Yes,
That's quite a vision. And here's another potential game changer. What if our plastic trash could actually help clean the air? Chemists have created a novel material. They're calling it BayEta, that's bismuth-activated ethylene terephthalate adsorbent, by converting common peatnate plastic waste, like from water bottles. And this material efficiently captures carbon dioxide, CO2.
This innovation offers a fantastic dual benefit, doesn't it? Combating the pervasive problem of plastic waste and addressing climate change by capturing CO2. The process is reported to be energy efficient and scalable too, so it effectively turns a prevalent pollutant into a valuable carbon capturing resource.
What feels like the kind of breakthrough we need.
It really is. It could make a tangible difference in our fight against climate change, pushing us towards a more circular economy where waste is transformed into a solution, not just something to be buried or burned.
Okay, so brilliant innovations on one hand, turning waste into resources, windows into power plants. But on the other hand, the alarm bells for our planet continue to ring loudly. Let's talk about seagrass. These underwater ecosystems are recognized now for substantial carbon sequestration, potentially exceeding terrestrial forests.
That's right. Seagrass meadows, along with mangroves and salt marshes, are key components of what's called blue carbon initiatives. They store vast amounts of carbon, but their health is precarious. They're very vulnerable to nutrient pollution, particularly excessive nitrogen runoff from agriculture and wastewater. This can lead to harmful algal blooms that basically suffocate the seagrass.
So these underwater meadows are like silent climate heroes, but they have a weakness.
Precisely. Too much fertilizer runoff from land can turn these vital ecosystems into problem areas. So preserving and restoring them isn't just about carbon capture, it's about biodiversity habitat, coastal protection. But it requires really robust management strategies, especially controlling nutrient inputs.
And another hidden environmental threat. U.S. landfills are forming what a study calls garbage lasagnas.
Slight chuckle. Yeah, garbage lasagnas. It sounds funny, but it's serious. Layers of waste are apparently contributing to significant air pollution, indicating potentially serious oversight in waste management practices. This phenomenon presents a notable threat to nearby communities and the climate, exacerbating existing air quality problems. It highlights inadequate landfill management protocols and really calls for immediate policy interventions and more public awareness.
So the trash we throw away has a bigger, smellier, more polluting impact than we might think.
It seems so, creating hidden environmental threats right in or near our backyards.
And looking at the bigger picture, the oceans. A UC Santa Barbara study warns that if human impacts on oceans double by 2050, a critical tipping point could be reached.
An alarming study indeed. It suggests we could severely threaten marine ecosystems and, consequently, human societies that depend on them. Warming seas, fisheries collapse. These impacts will predominantly hit tropical and polar regions hardest, making coastal areas incredibly vulnerable.
And crossing thresholds like the 1.5 degrees C global temperature rise.
Could lead to profound and potentially irreversible changes, causing socioeconomic instability on a massive scale. The urgent questions are, how will coastal communities adapt if we continue on this path? What will be the economic and social cost of failing to act decisively now?
It's a stark reminder of the interconnectedness of our planet. And while we're talking global environmental threats, air pollution continues to be a major killer. Over 4.5 million premature deaths annually, according to the UN's World Meteorological Organization, the WMO.
Yeah, the global statistics are grim. Wildfires are causing severe pollution, impacting regions like Western Europe recently, and concentrations of PM 2.5, that's tiny particulate matter, 2.5 micrometers or smaller, remain high in places like Chile, Brazil, Ecuador, parts of Canada, Central Africa, and Siberia.
But there are some glimmers of hope.
There are, which is encouraging. Despite the widespread pollution, parts of eastern China and Europe, like Shanghai, for example, are showing improvements. That's thanks to concerted efforts like investing in green spaces and promoting electric vehicles. It demonstrates that targeted interventions can make a difference.
But overall,
very few cities currently meet the stricter World Health Organization, or WHO, air quality standards. So it remains a persistent public health crisis. It's a clear call for unified action on pollution and climate change, recognizing the complex links between them.
and just as these scientific reports paint a worrying picture, Mother Nature offers her own reminders. The Atlantic hurricane season is active. There's Invest 91L.
Right. The Atlantic is on the cusp of its potential second named storm of the season. Invest 91L looks likely to intensify into Tropical Storm Gabrielle. Conditions are favorable: warm sea surface temperatures, atmospheric instability. The National Hurricane Center has issued warnings for coastal residents to stay alert. It highlights the growing frequency and intensity of storms we seem to be seeing during hurricane season, emphasizing the need for ongoing vigilance and timely information.
Just when you thought you could pack away the emergency kit, Mother Nature reminds us who's really in charge.
Chuckle. Always pays to be prepared, especially this time of year.
Indeed. These environmental challenges, they're often exacerbated by political and economic decisions, which leads us perfectly into our next segment on global power struggles. And we are back, plunging into the intricate world of global power plays. It really is a chessboard out there, isn't it? The pieces are constantly shifting U.S. foreign policy, Europe's energy dilemmas, China's growing influence.
Indeed. And what truly stands out, I think, is how domestic policies, even the personalities of individual leaders, can profoundly impact international relations. It creates this complex web of alliances and tensions that ultimately affect us all. Hashtag A, U.S. foreign policy and domestic tensions.
Let's start with a major geopolitical flashpoint. The escalating tensions between the U.S. and Venezuela centered around the war on drugs. The U.S. has intensified its campaign against drug trafficking linked to Venezuela. We're talking deployments of naval ships, fighter jets, thousands of troops in the Caribbean. There have been serious incidents, too. U.S. forces targeting a Venezuelan vessel carrying cocaine, Venezuelan military jets approaching a U.S. Navy ship, and President Donald Trump warning the U.S. military is authorized to shoot down Venezuelan aircraft if deemed necessary.
This is a highly volatile situation, no doubt. The U.S. perspective, often reflecting a right-leaning national security focus, considers drug cartels terrorist organizations and views Venezuela under Nicolas Maduro as a narco-state. This viewpoint justifies aggressive actions to curb drug flow. Some analysts also suggest there might be underlying motives related to regime change. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, for instance, supports military action against traffickers as imminent threats.
And the Venezuelan perspective.
Well, from their side, often reflecting a left-leaning anti-imperialist stance, Maduro's government flatly rejects these allegations. They accuse the U.S. of interventionism, aggression, and using the drug war as a pretext for regime change. They point to the U.S. non-recognition of Maduro's 2018 election victory and draw parallels to past U.S. interventions, like the invasion of Iraq. It's a dangerous flashpoint, blending drug enforcement, national security, international sovereignty, with very high risks of military confrontation and diplomatic fallout across Latin America.
Moving to another complex relationship. U.S.-India ties. President Donald Trump initially imposed tariffs on India, criticized its oil commerce with Russia. One of Trump's aides, Howard Lutnick, even predicted India would cave to U.S. tariffs within 2 months. But then President Trump seemed to soften his tone, calling Prime Minister Narendra Modi a friend. Modi reciprocated, reaffirming positive ties despite the challenges.
This really demonstrates the intricate dance of international diplomacy, doesn't it? Where personal relationships between leaders can sometimes maybe smooth over deeper geopolitical and economic tensions. India has skillfully balanced its own interests against U.S. demands. They've maintained their stance on purchasing Russian oil and arms, which they see as crucial for their energy security and strategic autonomy.
It's a balancing act.
A complex one. Modi's visit to the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the SCO summit, and his meetings with China's Xi Jinping and Russia's Vladimir Putin further illustrate this. The Trump administration, with its America First focus, seeks to pressure India to align more closely with U.S. economic and geopolitical interests, reducing trade imbalances, curbing Russian influence. There are also concerns about, losing India to China.
In India's view.
India, conversely, prioritizes what it sees as its non-aligned sovereign interests, balancing relations with major powers, rejecting external intervention in issues like Kashmir.
Fascinating how nations navigate this multipolar world. Now let's look at a domestic U.S. policy that had immediate international ripples. U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, that's ICE, conducted a large-scale raid at a Hyundai construction site in Georgia. Also involved an LG battery factory being built there. They detained 475 individuals, primarily South Korean nationals, reportedly the largest single-site operation ever by Homeland Security Investigations, HSI.
Yeah, this incident highlights the heightened immigration enforcement under the Trump administration, clearly aiming to clamp down on unlawful employment. South Korea expressed deep concern immediately. They urged the U.S. to protect its citizens' rights and explicitly warned of strained trade relations valued at around $350 billion.
Well, a domestic raid with huge international economic implications.
Precisely. Supporters of the administration's action, often from a law and order right-leaning perspective, would see this as necessary for protecting lawful employment, upholding regulations, and addressing undocumented workers as part of a broader deportation agenda. Critics, however, typically from a human rights or left-leaning perspective, argue it infringes on human rights, negatively impacts the economy by removing potentially skilled workers, and creates fear in immigrant communities. Some reports suggested many detained were actually legally in the country, but faced bureaucratic issues.
So it directly impacts international relations.
And highlights that complex interplay between immigration policy, labor practices, and attracting foreign economic investment in the U.S., a domestic action with immediate global consequences.
Staying with the Trump administration, there was the move to rebrand the Pentagon as the Department of War.
Yes, President Trump signed an executive order making that change. The administration argued it aligns the department's title more honestly with its primary function, reflects the realities of conflict, promotes transparency, and perhaps galvanizes the base with a strong stance.
But it stirred backlash.
Considerable backlash, yes. From military personnel, officials, and critics, often from a more diplomacy-focused, left-leaning perspective. They fear it could escalate militarization in politics, negatively impact diplomatic relations by sounding aggressive, and normalize militaristic language, potentially desensitizing the public to the implications of war.
I guess Department of Defense just didn't quite capture the vibe they were going for. Straight to the point, at least.
Slight chuckle. You could say that. It's certainly a symbolic shift with potentially real-world interpretations.
Also on the domestic front with international implications, the administration proposed changes for international students, replacing the duration of status policy for F1 academic students and J1 exchange visitors with fixed 4-year admission periods.
Right, meaning students in programs longer than 4 years would need to apply for extensions. The Department of Homeland Security, DHS, framed this as a national security measure. But critics argue it's unnecessary bureaucracy that could push away talented international students, ultimately impacting the U.S. economy and innovation. They see it as detrimental to America's standing as a global hub for education and talent.
And separately, President Trump also suggested revoking an unnamed celebrity's American citizenship.
Yes, that comment aligns with his pattern of using public feuds, often with high-profile individuals, possibly to energize his base. It immediately raised constitutional questions about the grounds and process for revoking citizenship, which is extremely difficult and rare in the U.S.
So these policies affect America's image.
Affect America's standing as a destination for global talent, and also raise fundamental questions about citizenship rights and potentially political targeting within the U.S. system.
Two more domestic issues with wider resonance. The Justice Department reportedly considered restricting gun ownership among transgender individuals.
That sparked immediate backlash from both gun rights advocates and LGBTQ, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer questioning organizations. Critics condemned it as penalizing an entire demographic for the actions of possibly a few individuals, arguing it's unjust, discriminatory, unconstitutional, and would face immediate legal challenges. It highlights deep tensions between gun control measures and the rights of marginalized communities, cutting across typical political lines.
A very contentious issue.
Extremely. It hits multiple civil liberties and rights debates simultaneously.
And finally, the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, reportedly initiated suspension proceedings against over 100 employees who signed a letter of dissent against Trump administration policies.
Yes, the union representing these employees viewed this as a severe crackdown on free speech and employee rights. It raised serious concerns about scientific integrity and the ability for open dialogue within federal health and environmental agencies, particularly regarding environmental policy rollbacks.
So questioning dissent within government agencies.
It raises fundamental questions about dissent, free speech protections for government employees, and the independence of scientific and regulatory bodies within the government structure.
Okay, let's turn our attention now to Europe. It's grappling with its own set of complex challenges: energy security, wider security concerns stemming from the Ukraine conflict, and internal divisions. On the energy front, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky recently refused to supply non-Russian gas and oil to Slovakia. That's interesting. Meanwhile, Hungarian Foreign Minister Peter Szijjártó criticized what he called EU hypocrites for buying Russian crude through intermediaries while sanctioning Hungary for its own direct deals. And then you have EU Commissioner Dan Jorgensen demanding a permanent ban on all Russian energy imports by 2027. It sounds messy.
It is messy. It's a live example of how geopolitics directly impacts energy prices, national economies, and the unity, or lack thereof, within major alliances like the EU. The broader EU goal, supported by the U.S., is complete energy independence from Russia. They want to halt new deals, stop uranium imports, crack down on these shattered fleets transporting Russian oil. The aim is to cripple Russia's war economy and transition to alternative sources like American LNG and nuclear fuel.
Hungary and Slovakia are resisting.
Yes, they cite their economic security, a lack of immediate alternatives. They prioritize national energy needs and argue against immediate full bans due to the severe economic impact. Shujarto's hypocrisy comment points out that other EU nations might be publicly condemning Russia while quietly finding ways to still access its energy, reflecting perhaps a more pragmatic, maybe right-leaning Europe-first energy security focus in some quarters.
And Russia's response.
Moscow warns of increased prices and further destabilization within the EU bloc if they pursue a full ban. It really highlights the diverse interests within the EU and the enormous challenges of forging a unified energy policy amidst war and economic pressure.
So geopolitical pressure versus national energy needs.
Precisely. A complex balancing act testing the very cohesion of the European Union.
And the conflict in Ukraine continues to cast a long shadow over European security. The Wall Street Journal reported that U.S. generals are involved in a European plan to potentially send 10,000 troops into Ukraine. However, prominent German politicians like Markus Söder, leader of Bavaria's Christian Social Union, CSU, and even Chancellor Friedrich Merz, are strongly opposing any NATO North Atlantic Treaty Organization troop deployment. They fear escalation with Russia.
Right. The potential for a direct NATO-Russia confrontation remains a critical global security concern. Söder stated flatly that Germany's army isn't ready for such a deployment, and German public opinion opposes it. Merz suggests a deployment could only even be considered after a ceasefire and with negotiations involving Russia. This reflects a more cautious, perhaps center-left perspective, prioritizing de-escalation and diplomacy.
Whereas other NATO allies might favor a stronger stance.
Potentially, yes. Other allies, sometimes from a more hawkish, maybe center-right perspective, might argue for a stronger show of force to deter further Russian aggression. This highlights deep divisions within Europe and within NATO itself regarding the best path forward in the Ukraine conflict. Germany's stance reflects complex internal pressures, balancing alliance commitments with national readiness, public sentiment, and the historical weight of potential conflict with Russia. The stakes are incredibly high.
Shifting focus within Europe, there are concerns about France's influence. Spain's former foreign minister, González, expressed worries about France's diminishing influence within the EU.
Yes. He suggested this could negatively impact the EU's overall collaborative strength and its ability to respond effectively to challenges. It implies that internal EU dynamics might be shifting. The stability and influence of major members like France have ripple effects on the entire bloc's cohesion and decision-making capabilities, especially at a time of ongoing trade disputes with the US and other global pressures.
And domestically, France is bracing for protests. The Block Everything movement.
That's right. It's described as a movement comprised mainly of young, far-left individuals planning widespread protests, aiming to shut down various sectors on September 10th in resistance to government policies. It seems like a grassroots initiative reflecting growing youth mobilization and discontent with the status quo in France. It highlights evolving political activism amidst social divides and economic challenges.
Block Everything sounds less like a protest movement and more like my Monday morning to-do list.
Chuckle. Well, it certainly signals a desire for significant disruption. The internal health and social cohesion of major EU nations directly impact the bloc's global standing.
Elsewhere in the region, Lebanon faces the Hezbollah dilemma. The cabinet received an army proposal to disarm Hezbollah, but apparently without a specific timeline and acknowledging the army has limited capabilities to enforce it.
Yes, and this led to an immediate walkout by 5 Shia ministers linked to Hezbollah and the Amal movement. It highlights a deep national split, gaining urgency after the recent conflict with Israel. Hezbollah remains resolute in maintaining its arms, warning against civil unrest and arguing that disarming while still under threat from Israel is misguided. The U.S. and Saudi Arabia, meanwhile, support disarmament efforts. It's a complex internal conflict with significant regional implications.
And briefly, we see political tensions elsewhere, too. In Moldova, international human rights advocates are supporting Evgenia Gutsel, the leader of the autonomous Gagauzia region. She was sentenced to 7 years for allegedly financing a political party.
Her lawyers claim the charges are politically motivated, designed to suppress a regional leader whose democratic choices are seen as threatening the central government's authority in Moldova. They're planning appeals to European and UN bodies. It raises questions about fair trials and human rights in the region.
And in Serbia, police in the city of Novi Sad used tear gas to disperse anti-government protesters demanding early elections and President Alexander Vucic's resignation.
These protests seem fueled by broad dissatisfaction with the administration, calls for political reform, and concerns over civil liberties and the right to protest. It appears to be part of a wider trend of civic unrest and demands for democratic change in parts of Eastern Europe. ###C, China's growing influence in economic intersections.
Okay, let's pivot now to China. its influence continues to expand globally, often intersecting with complex economic and geopolitical dynamics. First, we saw a sanctioned Russian LNG liquefied natural gas tanker, the Voskhod LNG, docking in China. It was carrying gas from Russia's Arctic LNG-2 project, which is under Western sanctions.
Yes, and this was reportedly the second such tanker to arrive, following a high-profile meeting between Russian President Vladimir Putin and Chinese leader Xi Jinping. It really underscores the deepening economic ties between Russia and China, especially in the face of those Western sanctions. It highlights China's continued willingness to accept Russian energy exports.
What are the implications?
Well, it has significant implications for global energy markets, obviously.
Yeah.
It also impacts geopolitical strategies. Crucially, it demonstrates how the effectiveness of international sanctions is constantly being tested. China's role here is pivotal. By providing a market for sanctioned Russian resources, it shapes global energy dynamics, challenges the Western-led economic order, and arguably strengthens the notion of an emerging multipolar world.
And China's influence isn't just related to Russia. They're also strengthening ties significantly in Africa. Chinese President Xi Jinping and Zimbabwean President Emerson Mnangagwa recently met, marking 45 years of diplomatic relations. China committed to supporting Zimbabwe's development infrastructure, mining, especially lithium, trade, investment, about $2 billion over 5 years, reportedly.
Right. China is already Africa's largest trading partner, and this reflects increased Chinese investment and a deepening strategic partnership. Both leaders emphasized opposition to external interference and promoted shared interests within the global south.
How is this viewed differently?
From China's perspective, and likely Zimbabwe's, this is framed as a mutually beneficial partnership. China secures access to vital resources like lithium, which is crucial for batteries, while Zimbabwe gets much-needed infrastructure and investment. It also expands China's economic and diplomatic footprint. However, critics, often in the West, sometimes frame these kinds of deals as debt trap diplomacy or resource exploitation, raising concerns about long-term sovereignty and environmental sustainability. It reflects a more cautious, sometimes skeptical view of China's global expansion.
So it clearly highlights the shifting global economic landscape.
Absolutely. And China's increasing influence in Africa is a major factor, challenging traditional Western economic relationships and reshaping international development and resource allocation. #D economic realities and wealth generation.
Now for a dive into economic realities and wealth generation. Because let's face it, money often dictates a lot of the world's movement, doesn't it? First up, Canada's unemployment rate just jumped sharply to 7.1% in August. That's a 9-year high, if you exclude the pandemic years. 1.6 million people unemployed, 65,500 jobs shed in 1 month.
Yeah, that's a significant downturn. Analysts are largely attributing this sharp decline to uncertainty surrounding U.S. trade policy, particularly the impact of tariffs on steel, aluminum, and automotive products. Those tariffs have hit Canada's manufacturing and transportation sectors hard. Following this disappointing jobs report, market speculation about an interest rate cut by the Bank of Canada surged. It's now seen as having a 92% probability.
So a clear link between trade policy and jobs.
A very clear example of how international trade policies can have direct, significant, and quite rapid impacts on national economies and individual livelihoods. It really shows how interconnected global markets are. One country's policy choices can swiftly affect another's economic stability.
And across the border, U.S. jobs growth also seems to have ground to a halt. The latest report indicated a significant stall in hiring, only 22,000 new jobs added in August. That's the second weak report in a row.
Yes, that's definitely raising serious concerns about the health of the U.S. labor market and potentially signaling an economic slowdown. It challenges previous assertions from political leaders about robust growth. Employers seem hesitant to expand their workforces, which could signal tougher times ahead.
How might different sides view this?
Well, the Trump administration will likely try to emphasize other positive economic indicators, perhaps focusing on GDP growth or stock market performance, reflecting a right-leaning, pro-business perspective aiming to maintain confidence. Critics, however, typically from a more left-leaning perspective, will view this stall as a clear sign of deeper economic issues, possibly even pointing towards a potential recession. They'd likely underscore the need for policy adjustments, maybe more stimulus or support for workers. Regardless of the spin, these numbers directly impact job seekers, consumer confidence, investment decisions, prompting a reevaluation of economic confidence across the board.
Buckle up, indeed. Looks like the economy might have just hit a speed bump the size of Mount Everest.
Chuckle. It's certainly a concerning sign after periods of stronger growth.
Now for a truly eye-watering number. Elon Musk's potential $1 trillion Tesla pay package. $1 trillion. Tesla's board proposed this package for CEO Elon Musk, potentially worth up to that amount over the next decade if he meets some extremely aggressive performance goals.
Extremely aggressive is right. Like reaching a market capitalization for Tesla of $8.5 trillion by 2035. If achieved, it could make him the world's first trillionaire based on this package alone. Musk currently holds about 13% of Tesla's shares. This package could potentially increase that to 25%.
What's the board's justification for such an astronomical figure?
They argue it's crucial to retain his leadership and, importantly, prevent a loss of key AI talent to competitors, especially as Tesla pivots more heavily into artificial intelligence and robotics beyond just electric vehicles.
And the opposing views?
Well, supporters, often from a strong capitalist, maybe right-leaning viewpoint, see it as an unprecedented package necessary to incentivize unprecedented results. They argue it aligns Musk's interests directly with massive company growth and secures his visionary leadership during a critical transformation. Critics, often from a perspective focused on corporate governance or income inequality, perhaps more left-leaning, question Musk's actual indispensable value. They raise serious concerns about the sheer scale of executive compensation, the widening gap between CEO pay and average workers, and even the feasibility of Tesla hitting such astronomical targets, given some past unmet promises from Musk.
So it's about more than just Musk's wealth.
Oh, absolutely. Shareholders will vote on this in November. Their decision will serve as a major benchmark for corporate governance, executive compensation standards, and how the market values companies pushing boundaries in AI and robotics. It's a landmark proposal.
Interestingly, while Tesla proposes this huge package for Musk, the company itself seems to be cutting back elsewhere. Tesla reportedly reduced its advertising spending on X, formerly Twitter.
Yes, down to approximately $300,000 in early 2025, which is described as a significant decrease from 2024 levels. This shift likely reflects Tesla's historical reliance on minimal traditional advertising. They've always leaned more on Musk's own profile and customer word of mouth. It might also be part of a broader trend of companies reevaluating their ad strategies on platforms like X.
Does it signal trouble for Tesla?
Not necessarily. Despite the ad cutback and ongoing criticism surrounding Elon Musk himself, Tesla reportedly maintained a 17.6% market share in battery electric vehicles, BEVs, in 2024. They seem focused on customer experience and product quality as their primary marketing tools. It raises questions about whether traditional advertising is becoming obsolete for powerful brands, or if this is just a calculated risk for Tesla amidst its CEO's controversies.
Finally, on the economic front, global postal traffic has apparently plummeted. Why? U.S. tariffs.
That's right. Postal traffic to the U.S. reportedly dropped over 80% after the Trump administration ended the tariff exemption for low-value imports, specifically items valued at $800 or less. As a result, 88 postal operators worldwide have either suspended or plan to suspend services for certain types of mail to the U.S. because the new system for collecting duties is complex and costly.
How are they trying to fix this?
The Universal Postal Union, the UPU, is working on a potential delivered duty paid solution to help collect duties at the origin country before shipping. But it's complicated. This directly impacts global postal services, e-commerce businesses, especially small ones relying on affordable shipping. Significant portions of inbound mail affected were coming from Europe and Asia.
Are there specific examples of countries affected?
Yes, Loss is reportedly considering rerouting its coffee sales to Russia due to 40% U.S. tariffs on its goods now. Brazil faces tariffs up to 50% on some items, Vietnam around 20%. If you've ordered something online internationally recently, you might have felt the effects: higher shipping costs, delays, or fewer options. It's a direct hit on global trade flows and small businesses worldwide.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. In this final segment, we're taking humanity's pulse. We'll touch on the heartbreak of global health and humanitarian crises, navigate the intricate debates shaping our societal well-being, and look at issues of justice. It's a powerful snapshot of the human experience right now.
This section really captures the diverse challenges, but also the resilience of human societies, doesn't it? We see these urgent needs for humanitarian aid right alongside profound ethical questions about our future. It reflects both the best and, frankly, the most challenging aspects of our collective humanity. ###A about global health and humanitarian crises.
Let's start with the devastating Israel-Gaza conflict. The humanitarian crisis there is intensifying dramatically. Israeli forces have escalated attacks on Gaza City, bombing high-rise buildings, issuing evacuation orders for residents to move towards a supposed humanitarian zone further south, all ahead of a planned ground offensive. The reported Palestinian death toll is now above 64,000. And tragically, 370 deaths specifically from malnutrition since October have been reported.
It's a rapidly evolving and utterly devastating humanitarian crisis. The Israeli military states its targets are Hamas intelligence operations, justifying these military actions as crucial for national security. That's the perspective often emphasized from a right-leaning pro-Israel viewpoint. However, critics, including numerous international organizations, Palestinian advocates, and voices often associated with a left-leaning human rights focus, allege systematic destruction and deliberate civilian displacement. They highlight mass starvation and severe malnutrition as violations of international humanitarian law, potentially amounting to war crimes.
And officials are speaking out.
Yes. The World Health Organization chief, Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, explicitly labeled the mass starvation a war crime. The UN rights chief, Volker Turk, has called for the U.S. to withdraw sanctions imposed on several Palestinian human rights organizations, Al-Haq, PCHR, Al-Mizan, arguing these sanctions are unacceptable and have a chilling effect on civil society globally, especially as these groups work with the International Criminal Court, ICC.
And regional reactions.
Egypt and Qatar have both condemned recent remarks by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu regarding the potential displacement of Palestinians. They called the rhetoric irresponsible, saying it exacerbates tensions, and reaffirmed their rejection of any forced displacement as a violation of international law.
And amidst all this horror, the 82nd Venice Film Festival is highlighting a film called The Voice of Hind Rajab. It depicts the story of a young Palestinian girl killed by Israeli forces earlier in the conflict.
Absolutely. It underscores the power of art, of cinema, to reflect global events and hopefully evoke empathy. It allows human stories to transcend borders and statistics, forcing a confrontation with the stark realities on the ground, even as the conflict itself raises these profound questions about international law, human rights, and any prospects for peace.
Moving to other regions facing crisis. A powerful 6.0 magnitude earthquake struck eastern Afghanistan near Nurgal district. The reports are grim.
Yes, over 2,200 dead reported, thousands injured. A WHO emergency team, led by Dr. Abdul Mateen Sahak, managed to airlift 23 metric tons of medical supplies, but the scale of the disaster is immense.
And the situation is complicated by the political context.
It is. The return of the Taliban has impacted the healthcare system, including the loss of many female healthcare professionals, which further exacerbates the crisis response challenges in a very conservative society.
And separately, in Sudan, there's a desperate situation following landslides.
Yes, reports from Save the Children describe villagers digging with their bare hands to try and reach victims buried by landslides. They simply lack proper tools and equipment. Both of these disasters highlight critical humanitarian crises unfolding in regions already struggling with inadequate infrastructure and limited governmental support. They underscore the immense human cost of natural disasters, particularly in vulnerable communities that lack resources to cope. It's a call for urgent international assistance, but also highlights the importance of local resilience.
Grim reminders of the fragility of life and the stark inequalities in disaster preparedness globally. #BB. Public health debates and societal well-being. Let's dive into some ongoing public health debates that are shaping our societal well-being and often sparking controversy. A big one right now. Kenvue's Salk, they make Tylenol, dropped 10% recently. On reports that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. intends to publicly link Tylenol acetaminophen use during pregnancy to autism. An upcoming Department of Health and Human Services report is also expected to address these concerns.
Yeah, this raises significant concerns among investors, certainly, but more importantly, among parents about a very widely used pain reliever. It really highlights that ongoing tension between established public health guidance, the body of scientific research, and prominent critics who challenge that consensus.
What are the main viewpoints here?
Well, the mainstream scientific and medical communities generally emphasize the lack of conclusive evidence from large-scale peer-reviewed studies proving such a link. They advocate for reliance on that established scientific consensus, which often aligns with a more center or center-left trust in scientific institutions. Conversely, critics like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. often highlight anecdotal evidence, smaller studies, or preclinical data to suggest potential risks and advocate for extreme caution. This taps into a public skepticism towards pharmaceutical companies and government health agencies, often appealing to a more populist base, sometimes right-leaning, sometimes just anti-establishment.
So it's a critical public health debate.
Absolutely. It impacts millions of parents making decisions during pregnancy and could shape the future of pharmaceutical regulation and, crucially, public trust in health authorities.
Another area of internal debate seems to be happening within the NIH, the National Institutes of Health. There are whistleblower complaints regarding vaccines.
Yes, reports suggest whistleblower complaints allege a key leader within NIH questioned vaccine efficacy. This apparently led to internal conflict and retaliation against other officials who were advocating strongly for vaccines and opposing the termination of grants for certain vaccine research projects. This situation highlights tensions over how vaccine discussions are handled internally, concerns about scientific integrity, and the potential influence of politics surrounding vaccine promotion within federal health agencies.
And the potential impact.
Well, internal strife like this, if it becomes widely known, could potentially impact public trust in health recommendations coming from these institutions. It touches on concerns about internal resistance to vaccination efforts versus genuine scientific debate and the potential for political interference impacting public health initiatives.
Shifting to lifestyle health.
Mhm.
There's growing awareness about visceral fat.
Yes, that's the abdominal fat stored deep around the organs. It's increasingly understood to be far more dangerous than subcutaneous fat, the fat just under the skin. Research shows it significantly increases the risk of cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and other metabolic issues. Visceral fat actively releases inflammatory molecules, impacts hormone regulation, and compromises metabolic function.
So it's not just about appearance.
Not at all. Proactive health measures, awareness programs, and strategies specifically targeting visceral fat reduction are being advocated as critical public health strategies, especially given the global obesity epidemic. It's about the hidden health risks that demand attention for longer, healthier lives.
And as smartphones become ubiquitous, especially for kids, what's the latest on the impact on children's mental health?
It's a complex picture. Research continues to explore both potential benefits, like finding supportive online communities, and significant risks, such as problematic usage patterns, exposure to harmful content, and what some call digital addiction. A key challenge is that current diagnostic frameworks like the DSM-5 lack specific classifications for digital media overuse, which leads to ongoing debate among mental health professionals about how to define and treat it.
So what's the recommended approach?
Experts often suggest a balanced approach. This typically includes age-appropriate guidelines for screen time, strong parental involvement and modeling of healthy habits, and potentially external regulatory measures on tech companies. The goal is fostering healthy smartphone habits rather than outright bans. Again, you see differing emphasis. Some focus more on regulation and societal factors, often a more left-leaning view, while others emphasize individual responsibility and digital literacy, often a more right-leaning view. But safeguarding developmental integrity and mental health is paramount as these devices become central to young lives.
Finally, in this section, a more philosophical topic, the pursuit of immortality.
Yes, discussions about radical life extension, even achieving a form of immortality through technology or biology, are becoming more mainstream, moving from science fiction into serious scientific and ethical debates. This prompts crucial consideration of the ethical implications and potential societal impacts. Questions arise immediately. Who would have access to these life-extending technologies? Would it exacerbate inequality?
What about population dynamics? Resource allocation?
Exactly. And even more fundamentally, what are the moral considerations of prolonging life indefinitely? Would it change the meaning of life itself? It requires really thoughtful navigation by scientists, policymakers, and society as a whole.
It's a fascinating philosophical and scientific frontier.
One that could profoundly reshape our future and our understanding of what it even means to be human. ###C, crime and social justice.
Now for a look at some crime and social justice issues making headlines. First, a concerning report from the BBC about youth and drug-laced vapes in the UK.
Yes, an undercover investigation in Warwickshire revealed how easily teenagers could apparently order drug-laced vapes, often containing synthetic cannabinoids, or THC, via the social media app Snapchat. The report described it as being almost as easy as ordering a pizza. This highlights growing concerns about youth drug use, the appeal of vaping among teens, and importantly, social media's potential role in facilitating illicit purchases. It's raising alarms for parents, educators, and law enforcement.
Underscoring the need for better regulation.
Absolutely. The urgent need for regulatory measures and platform accountability regarding these kinds of digital marketplaces selling illegal or harmful products to minors. The digital world creates new avenues for old problems.
Now to Australia, where a neo-Nazi group attacked Camp Sovereignty, a sacred indigenous site in Melbourne, during an anti-immigration rally.
A very disturbing incident. Reports indicate injuries occurred during the attack. Critically, indigenous leaders and activists allege that police responding to the scene prioritized arresting counter-protesters who came to defend the site rather than the neo-Nazi attackers initially. This raises significant concerns about far-right extremism in Australia, potential systemic racism by authorities, and a growing trend of neo-Nazi activity possibly linked to international movements.
What's the reaction been?
Indigenous leaders condemn the attack as a hate crime and strongly criticize the police response, calling for investigations into potential law enforcement infiltration by far-right sympathizers. This reflects a clear anti-racism and human rights focus, often associated with left-leaning activism, demanding accountability for systemic issues. Conversely, while condemning violence, some conservative viewpoints might focus more broadly on the clashes between protesters and counter-protesters, or on the underlying anti-immigration sentiment, perhaps downplaying the specific neo-Nazi element. It's a stark reminder that hate groups and systemic issues persist, challenging social cohesion.
And in London, significant arrests during a protest against the UK government's ban on the Group Palestine action.
Yes, at least 150 people were arrested. The police declared the protests illegal, citing concerns about potential for serious disruption or violence. The ban itself was implemented under anti-terrorism legislation. Protesters argue the ban suppresses free expression and peaceful dissent, calling it an attempt to stifle activism critical of Israel and companies supplying it. This perspective emphasizes civil liberties and the right to protest, often a left-leaning viewpoint. Supporters of the ban and the authorities enforcing it emphasize public safety and maintaining public order, citing past actions by the group that involved property damage. This reflects a security-focused perspective, often more aligned with right-leaning views on law and order.
So a clash over civil liberties.
Exactly. It highlights that delicate, often tense balance between national security concerns, maintaining public order, and protecting the fundamental right to protest and express dissent in democratic societies. Hashtag the arts, culture, and notable figures.
Let's wrap up today's deep dive with a look at arts, culture, and some notable figures making headlines. First, the Catholic Church is set to canonize its first millennial saint.
That's right. Carlo Acutis, who's become known as God's influencer, will be canonized in a Vatican ceremony led by Pope Leo XIV. Acutis died tragically young at 15 from leukemia back in 2006. But before that, he used his coding skills to create a website cataloging Eucharistic miracles around the world. He really connected with Catholic youth globally through technology.
And sainthood requires miracles, right?
Yes, typically 2 authenticated miracles attributed to his intercession are required after death, and the Church has recognized 2 in his case. This historic canonization is fascinating because it highlights the Catholic Church actively engaging with the digital age, recognizing technology's potential role for spiritual purposes. Acutis himself championed acceptance and kindness, focusing on helping marginalized individuals. It's a unique intersection of faith, technology, and youth culture.
Reflecting how even ancient institutions adapt and find ways to inspire new generations using modern tools.
Precisely.
And finally, the Venice Film Festival is concluding and set to announce its awards. Always a significant event in the film world.
Indeed. As one of the oldest and most prestigious film festivals, Venice often launches major Oscar contenders. It highlights the year's top films, directors, and actors on the international stage.
And we mentioned one film earlier.
Yes, notably The Voice of Hind Rajab. The film about the young Palestinian girl killed by Israeli forces is competing for the top prize, the Golden Lion. The inclusion of such a poignant and politically charged film underscores cinema's powerful role, not just as entertainment, but as a medium for reflecting global events, sharing human stories, and provoking thought and empathy, often bringing overlooked perspectives to a global audience. Beyond the glamour, film festivals remain a vital window into global narratives and critical issues.
So today, we've journeyed from the vastness of the cosmos right down to the intricate details of human history. We've explored the cutting edge of AI, the pressing challenges of a changing planet, and navigated the complex web of global politics and urgent humanitarian crises.
It's quite a range. We've seen how ancient footprints can connect us to a potential hibernating past. How something like Elon Musk's proposed pay package reflects huge questions about the future of AI and corporate ambition.
And how conflicts on Earth ripple outwards, affecting health, trade, international relations, even the fundamental right to protest. This is really what we try to do here. Connect the dots across seemingly disparate events to help you see the bigger picture.
And what really stands out from today's sources, I think, is that persistent tension between human ingenuity, our ability to achieve incredible scientific feats, develop amazing technologies, and our enduring challenges. We still grapple with ancient problems: conflict, inequality, our impact on the environment.
It seems the path forward involves both immense progress and profound ethical navigation, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Which brings us to the crucial question, really.
As we consider these profound shifts in our understanding of the universe, the sheer speed of technological innovation, these persistent human challenges of conflict and inequality, what responsibility do we have, as individuals, as a global society, to shape the future that's unfolding around us right now?
Are we merely observers of these powerful trends, or can we be active participants in shaping the outcomes?
That is the critical question, isn't it?
Yeah.
The choices made today, from individual actions right up to international policies, they will define the world we inhabit tomorrow.
It really feels like a call for conscious participation rather than just passive observation of it all.
Thank you for taking this deep dive with us today. We sincerely hope you found these insights valuable, maybe thought-provoking. We encourage you to continue exploring these topics, digging deeper, and forming your own informed opinions.